Hi everybody. Welcome to the second and final part of this video lecture on natural law. Today we're going to start with the man you see on the screen, David Hume, a very important and controversial philosopher, I have to say, with very controversial or at least thought-provoking ideas. We're going to talk actually about one of those thought-provoking ideas from David Hume. Scottish thinker, he lived during the 1700s, and he provided the most famous critique to natural law known in philosophy. His argument against it is often called Hume's law. Hume's law. It's consists in a statement, but before we get there, Hume claimed that though it is always possible to describe the works of nature from what we perceive, it is never possible to find in nature rules of behavior or moral norms. You can indeed say what nature is, what it does, and how it does it, but not what living species should do. You can't get an ought from an is, Hume famously say, and that's the statement, that's the law. You can't get an ought from an is. That's a very serious categorical mistake. You're going from one domain to another one that it's absolutely different. Nature is one domain. Morality, it's a whole different domain. And you can obviously tell they're two different things because you don't see norms in nature, right? There's no morality written in nature. So the idea of relying on nature as a standard of moral behavior and justice, that's absolutely crazy for David Hume, right? So it's something that it's definitely not reliable, takes a lot of speculation, is subjective, claiming that there are indeed laws in nature and that we should follow nature to live our lives in a proper way. Okay, so that's the objection. These are two different things. Describing is one thing, prescribing is a totally different thing. All right. Well, but there are other philosophers who have a different view about the same issue. A major figure in the natural law tradition who anticipated Hume's objection was the Catholic theologian Thomas Aquinas, who lived, as you can see, during the 1200s. So he anticipated this objection in a way 500 years ago, before Hume's time. Aquinas believed that the key element in nature that gives us a clear and objective view of what morality prescribes is teleology. The idea that whatever natural purpose a living organism is seen to perform constitutes its moral goal as well. This is particularly visible when we consider an organism's parts and organs. So, so the idea is this. Teleology comes from a Greek word, telos. Telos means end or goal or purpose. And according to Aquinas, when you consider the telos of an organ, you will immediately see what nature prescribes, morally speaking. Okay, so here's an example. Consider your lungs. Okay, the natural goal, the telos of your lungs is to take in oxygen, right? And your body needs that oxygen. So that is the natural goal, the telos of your lungs. So whenever you put something in your lungs, like smoke, if you like to smoke, or vape, then you're doing something contrary to the nature, the telos of your lungs, and therefore you're going to be in trouble. You're going to end up harming yourself. And that is something wrong to do. Smoking is wrong to do. This is not something subjective or crazy or arbitrary. This is not a serious categorical mistake. This is the way things are. We understand based on the telos of things, of our organs or organisms, we understand what is right, proper, and what is wrong, what we should do. So this is not something crazy. Let me offer you another example. We say, for example, that a bird's wing is good if it fulfills its natural purpose, allowing the bird to fly. And whenever we see a bird with a defective wing, we say there is something wrong with it. That's how we think. Oftentimes, veterinarians and animal lovers help animals with defective limbs so these can accomplish their natural purpose by working as they should. You see the words I'm emphasizing here? Good, wrong, should, based on the telos of our organs, the teleology inherent in nature. These teleological normative judgments, therefore, are not arbitrary, but based on the nature of our organs and body parts. Now, there's so many examples that I can give you. Like, there's so many examples. Actually, let's go to the next slide to see some of those examples. Okay, here we go. Teleology-based health devices. Okay. Look at the first example, those shoes, leveler shoes. These are shoes designed for people who have a shorter leg. Okay, people who were born with that condition, have a leg shorter than the other one. And as you can see, one of the shoes have a thicker base. So that allows people with a shorter leg to walk easier and more effectively, right? And more comfortably. So, okay, this is not a crazy idea. The next example in the bottom, these glasses. Okay, these glasses are very special. They're designed for people who are colorblind. Now, you might know what a colorblind person is, right? What is this condition? Basically, some people just cannot distinguish colors, and pretty much they see in black and white and gray, right? Mostly. So, okay, well, people design these glasses so when colorblind people put them on, they can actually see in colors. And think about just regular glasses. Think about the glasses I'm wearing right now. You know, when you see somebody trying to read something at a distance and having a hard time trying to read, don't you say things like, there's something wrong with your eyes. You probably should go to the eye doctor. You probably should get some glasses. Is that something crazy to say? You understand the telos of the eyes. Okay, the purpose, the natural goal of the eyes is to distinguish colors, among other things, discriminate between different things. And whenever your eyes are not doing that job, they're not fulfilling their telos, we immediately recognize wrongness. There's something wrong with your eyes. You should have glasses. Okay, well, according to David Hume, this is something crazy to say or bizarre. Hey, wait a minute. You cannot do that. Okay, you're going from one domain to a different domain. You're going from nature to morality. You're making judgment based on nature. That's wrong. Well, Mr. Hume, your argument might make some sense, might seem logical, but that's not the way we go about the world. We don't live like that. We don't think like that, Mr. Hume. So we actually have this inbuilt form of thinking that appeals to teleology, and it's just the right way of thinking. Gosh, I'm going to put a tag in this video. A video that I watched a few years ago, and it was quite viral. This young man, he's a boy actually, he's about 10 or 11 years old, and him seeing in color for the first time, like dad comes home with this fancy glasses that you see on the screen, and he takes his son outside to the backyard, and he says, and he's recording right at the same time, and he tells his son, put on these glasses and tell me what you see. You have to see this video. It's just so beautiful, so moving. It is so moving because this young man looking at the trees and colors for the first time, he gets overwhelmed by, I don't know, gratitude. He has never seen anything so beautiful, nature in colors. And his reaction, he starts to cry and he hugs his dad. It's a beautiful video. Beautiful video. Now, but something bizarre for Mr. Hume, probably. Mr. Hume going, because he would say something like, I guess, oh, you were born colorblind? Well, that's just the way it is. That's the way nature made you. So Sorry, right? It is what it is. No, that's not how we think. You cannot see in colors. We should do something about it. We must do something about it. We know what the right thing to do is. We have to get this person some special glasses. You were born with a shorter leg. Oh, sorry. Well, that's your nature. That's how it is. Well, no, it is what it is, but it's not how it should be. People are born with two even legs so they can walk. And whenever that's not happening, okay, then we find a solution because having a shorter leg is not right. And so for David Hume, these are crazy, bizarre way of thinking. What do you think? Are you on Hume's side or are you on common sense side? So, like I said, something that I, I don't like about philosophers sometimes, and especially contemporary philosophers. They look at an argument like Hume's and they go like, oh, that's right, that's it. Yeah, we cannot make moral judgment based on nature. That's a terrible idea. We do it all the time. What are you talking about? So there's more examples on the screen, right? When we use crutches, when we have prosthetics, it is the same idea. There's something missing, something you cannot do naturally well. We're gonna get you some devices, some help, some technology, so you can walk, you can grab things as you should. Okay, I think I made my point. So let's go to the next slide. An interesting fact about natural law in teleology is that this relationship seems to provide an answer to one of the most fundamental questions in philosophy. Do human beings have a purpose? Natural law thinkers often argue this way. Considering that every part or organ in a person's body performs a particular purpose, a telos, it follows that the whole person must also have a purpose. Okay? Some philosophers like to call this a fallacious kind of thinking. And the fallacy here is the part and whole fallacy. Okay, another thing philosophers do, are so smart, great logical arguments that we don't normally apply in real life. And I'm talking about the fallacy. We don't see a fallacy here. We don't see a mistaken reasoning here. We see common sense. Think of a car, for example. Open the hood of a car and look at the parts. The battery is there for a purpose, to power up the car. The radiator is there for a purpose, to keep the engine cool. Everything is there for a particular reason. Now, question. Does the whole car have a purpose, a goal, or the car has no purpose? Is it insane to assume that because the parts in the car they have a particular goal? Is it stupid to assume that the whole car has a goal, a purpose? Well, no, right? I mean, the purpose of the car is to take us to places. Of course, there is a purpose in a car. Well, that the same is true for human beings. It is, I mean, just use logic. This is also logical, don't you think? Our lungs are there for a reason. Our heart is there for a reason. Our fingers, our eyes, everything. Okay, what about the whole of me? Do I have a purpose in life? Natural law people would say, obviously. Obviously. Now, what is that purpose? To most natural law thinkers, this purpose is no other than obeying the moral law in nature and worship God. Yeah, natural law people have this thing with God. We talked about it in the previous video, remember? Especially in Cicero. It makes this connection between God and reason and how reason is divine and so on. And not just Cicero, but in antiquity, even Heraclitus, the so-called founder of the natural law way of thinking. So, and also remember from our previous video, Cicero's injunction, right, of what it means to be happy. What is happiness all about? Do you remember that? Very, very important idea, very important paragraph. And it basically describes our goal as human beings. So if you haven't seen it, please do. Very, very cool idea, argument that Cicero put there for natural law and this idea of human beings having a purpose. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Now, Thomas Jefferson, a key figure in American history who was clearly influenced by natural law, is Thomas Jefferson, who lived during the 17 and 1800s. Jefferson, who among other achievements wrote the American Declaration of Independence, a document whose publication pretty much gave birth to our nation. Now, let's see how influenced Thomas Jefferson was by natural law. This is the Declaration of Independence, very first paragraph. Take a look. Jefferson wrote famously, right? When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. What? Well, okay, basically, whenever it happens that we have a deal, a relationship with another country, if the relationship gets toxic, okay, we have the right to end the relationship and state the reasons for the separation. He's saying something like that, right? But you see the appeals to the laws of nature, nature's God. And then the second paragraph, a famous paragraph in the Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator, God, with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So it's self-evident that there is a Creator, that we were created, and that our Creator, God, gave us these three rights, God-given rights. It's so obvious for Jefferson and for people during his time, and for centuries. For Cicero and many people in history, like Thomas Aquinas and so, and except for Mr. David Hume, of course, that was not evident. But the point is not to criticize Mr. Hume. We have to consider the objections because we must, right? But you be the judges of this idea of natural law, whether it is absurd, whether it is logical, makes sense, whether it is important or not important. I think that part you cannot deny, that it has been incredibly important. Natural law thinking gave us, among other achievements, this statement, right? This document, the Declaration of Independence, and other important institutions like universal human rights. Okay, that's another natural law product. Anyways, let's go to the next slide. Heinrich Roman, natural law legal philosopher. Now we're looking at 1900s mostly. According to Roman, when laws do not stem from natural reason, they are simply based on the arbitrary will of legislators. So he makes this distinction between reason and will, right? Natural reason and will. And regardless of the due process established by these legislators, regardless of the due process, according to Roman, and I quote, if a law is will, then the law can make it right to give death to an innocent person intentionally, or to make the perpetrator of violence an innocent person. When the law is based on will, you can make anything legal or illegal. Anything it's up to the legislator, right? If it's a democratic process, whatever the majority says, that's the right thing. Okay. What about minorities? What about Nazi Germany, right? Most people were on board with Hitler and killing the Jews, but that's not right. Well, that's the point Mr. Roman is trying to make here. The Nazis and other institutions like slavery, these institutions are based on will, not natural reason. So this is why it's important to recognize natural reason and distinguish it from will. So therefore, in the Declaration of Independence, our rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness are not given to us by an act of will from a political party or legislator, Jefferson, right? But by an act of reason. This is Romans. In fact, according to Roman, the right to life, liberty, and property make the law The law does not create them. So it's so for Roman and for natural law people, we don't have a natural right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness because Jefferson wrote about it. It's the other way. Jefferson wrote about these rights because we have them, because they're obviously in nature. These are natural rights. That's why he wrote about them. It's not the other way. So there's no point in Jefferson, for example, changing his mind. Okay, you can change your mind all you want, but you're not going to change reason and natural law, natural reason. So, and you see, this benefits everybody, because think about those people who were enslaved, right? In American history. Okay, slavery was an act of an institution of will, not of reason, because people were obviously victimized, and people's right to be free was absolutely violated. So that institution is never right. What the Nazi Germans did to the Jews, same thing. It doesn't matter if the majority was on board with it. It doesn't matter. It's still wrong according to natural law because you're violating people's fundamental natural rights, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. But there's more about natural rights that I want to talk to you about. Maritain and Natural Rights. In his seminal book, Man and the State, natural law thinker Jacques Maritain, a French philosopher, offers a very useful criterion for how to derive fundamental natural rights from reason in a safe, objective way. He calls this criterion practical agreement, okay? Practical agreement, according to which people, regardless of culture, religion, or ideology, can recognize the value a right has for themselves and everyone else. So, in other words, it's sort of evident for a person and for everybody. It's evident these natural rights. Think about, the right to life. It's pretty evident this is something absolute and objective as opposed to subjective. Because here's the thing. When things are subjective, you can get different opinions about the same thing. But objectivity means everybody having the same view. That's objective. When everybody agrees, okay, that's the practical agreement. When everybody agrees on the same thing, okay, we're not talking about something subjective. That we're talking about something objective. Now, ask people. Go around and ask people if you don't believe my words. Go around asking people one by one. Do you think you have a right to your life? Do you think your life belongs to you? You know what you're going to hear most likely all the time? People saying, of course, yes, my life belongs to me. Now, try to ask them, do you think you have the right to be free? Or do you think somebody else should have the power, the right to put you in chains and enslave you? Most likely, all the time, you're going to get the same answer. People are going to say, of course I have the right to be free. Nobody has the right to put me in chains. Nobody. If you ask this question to every single person in the world, they're going to give you the same answer. So you know what that means, friends? Now we're talking about something pretty objective. We're talking about a natural right. That is practical agreement. Because practically, you can ask people, you can engage people in that sort of questioning and conversation, and you're going to get the same answer. You're going to find agreement. So that's why these are natural rights, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. But there are more natural rights. I want to offer you a very cool list of natural rights that they are part of the natural law tradition. Now, 14 natural rights. Right to life, right to liberty, right to property. Originally, Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, influenced especially by John Locke, a British philosopher, natural law philosopher who he talked about these three being the three fundamental God-given rights: life, liberty, and property. But then Jefferson, changed the third one, and he said pursuit of happiness. But anyways, try going around different places, different countries, asking people, do you think the stuff that is yours is yours? Do you think your stuff belongs to you? They're going to say, heck yeah. Like my stuff is mine. It's not anybody else's. Well, there you go. That's a natural right to property. Right to protect oneself. That's a natural right. Same thing. Ask people, do you think you have the right to protect yourself, to defend yourself if somebody's attacking you? You're going to get the same answer. Of course. Of course, I have the right to protect myself. Right to conscience. To think and believe whatever you want to believe. That's your universal natural right of conscience. Right to freedom of speech. You have the right to say what you want to say. If you don't want to say it, okay, well, you're still exercising your right. If there's something you don't want to say, don't say it. Okay, you cannot be forced to say something you don't want to say. So that's part of the right to freedom of speech. You have the right to exercise speech or not. That's your right. No, it's not nobody else's. Right to justice. Oh yeah. Right to physical integrity. Very important. Go around, ask people. Do you think you have the right to your physical integrity, so no one has the right to physically assault you? Okay, people are going to give you the same answer. Yeah, nobody has the right to attack me physically. Nobody. So that means that I have a natural right to physical integrity. Who's going to tell you, right? Yeah, I think my husband has a right to beat the crap out of me. Okay, that person would need definitely psychological assistance. So, right to seek the truth, right to privacy, very important. You can exercise this if you want to, right? If you want to be in private, that's what you want to do, that's your right. You want to be with others, that's also your right. Right to rest, interesting. That's an interesting right. Right to work, especially in our times. Okay, and that has to do with the right to life, don't you think? Because in order for you to stay alive, you need food, and in order for you to get food, you need a job, most likely in most places in the world today. So that's a right that you have. You have the right to a job. So whatever state you're in or government, that is their fundamental duty to make sure people have the capacity to provide for themselves. Okay, that's your right. And right to association has to do with right to privacy, right? It's your right. You're free to hang out with people or be by yourself. That is absolutely your right. Everybody will say, yes, I agree. Practical agreement. Right to public office. If you want to run for office, be a president or a mayor, whatever, you have that right. If you're not interested, fine. But that's still your right. It's part of your right. If you're not interested in politics, okay, fine. You don't have to engage in politics. But if you want to, then you have the right to. So you cannot be barred from pursuing public office. That's a natural right, according to natural law. Please keep these rights in mind, especially the right to physical integrity, okay, right to life. Keep this in mind for what we're going to do, what I'm going to talk about in an upcoming slide. Reason, will, and natural rights. Suppose a man comes into a grocery store and takes a loaf of bread without paying. Okay, I'm using this scenario because my students often give me this scenario to justify stealing or shoplifting. So, a man comes into a grocery store and takes a loaf of bread without paying. Later, on being caught, he claims that he had a good reason for taking the bread. He's been unemployed for months, and having no money, he took the bread to feed his children. According to natural law, even if the man is telling the truth, let's say it's absolutely true. Okay, this man is being unemployed and he has children to feed. So let's say that's true. Even if that's true, um, according to natural law, his justification, his reason for taking the bread is not really reason, but will. It's will. And it's funny how, and not just funny, but it's actually sad when my students say, "Okay, that's reasonable. That makes sense. That's justifiable. Taking food without paying when you're starving and you have children to feed. That's no. I'm sorry, but no. That is not. That is not proper. That is not right under any circumstance." And I'm going to tell you why, according to natural law. The sole purpose of a grocery store is to make money by selling their product, right? A man who walks in with the intention of stealing is violating the store owner's right to property by imposing his will using deceit or force. So, okay, there is a clear violation here of a natural right. The store owner's natural right to property. Remember, your stuff is your stuff. It's not somebody else's stuff. Nobody has the right to have your things that belongs to you. No, nobody. That's an absolute fundamental natural right. So it is never right to steal. Shoplifting, vandalizing a store, it is never ever right according to natural law. And I agree. Because again, we all agree on these fundamental rights, all of us. And because we all agree, we can rest pretty sure that we won't be victimized or taken advantage of. Okay, so now, if the store owner consents to give the man the bread for free, then we don't have will anymore. We have reason. We have reason. If there is consent, right? If, let's say, the man talks to the store owner and he says to her, listen, I've been unemployed for a month. I'm hungry. I need to feed my kids. If the store owner says, you know what, take the bread. Okay, then we have what Maritain called practical agreement. Okay, both parties, at least both parties involved in the situation, they consent, they agree, and okay, we don't have will anymore. We have reason. So what do you think? Now, think about, gosh, what's going on in many places, especially in California. There's where shoplifting is rampant and people vandalizing stores, especially fancy stores like Louis Vuitton and Apple stores. Not really because they want to eat, right? But obviously they're doing for other reasons. But California has adopted a compassion-oriented approach to justice. You know, oh, we have to be compassionate about the shoplifter, these people breaking into stores and stuff. We have to understand. You know, these people, most of them had traumas and they had terrible upbringings, and it's quite sad. You know, their life stories, and so we should exercise compassion. We should. Gosh, but who? That sounds really, really noble, right? Really, really virtuous. But what if it happens to you? What if somebody's taking your stuff? What if somebody's breaking into your place and vandalizing your property, your car? Okay, you're not going to be happy. Those people vandalizing your car, they're not going to be happy if somebody else does the same thing to them. They're going to be outrageous too, because again, this is a natural right that it's in our thinking. It's in everybody's thinking. So, I don't know. I would like to know what you think. Post a comment, please, if you disagree. You're welcome to disagree. Okay, and I've learned a lot from students and people disagreeing. So please post a comment if you will. Natural thinkers argue that whenever one or more of these fundamental rights is unacknowledged, victimization is sure to occur. Somebody will be victimized. In the hard cases, most known cases in history, again, slavery, Nazi Germany, but again, think about California. and maybe the town or city you live in. Same thing. If people are not mindful of these fundamental rights, these natural rights, we're going to be in trouble. We're going to be in trouble. And we're not going to live in the best communities. So it's so, so important. Natural law is so important. And it's unfortunately a theory that has been discredited and misunderstood, sometimes on purpose. And I'm going to say more about that in a moment. But to finish this slide. The reason and will distinction, as well as the idea of natural rights and victimization, will play an essential role in our course. For those of you who are my students watching, these are very important ideas that we will consider during the course. Natural rights, victimization, will, and reason. And we're going to consider these ideas in our upcoming analysis of the ethical theories we'll learn during the semester. As you can see, natural law not only had an impact in American history and politics, but in the whole world as well, as it provided the foundation for one of the most important institutions in our world, the universal human rights. Okay, I said that before. This is a natural law institution. Okay, it's a good thing. Making sure we have an organization that it makes sure that these fundamental rights are not being violated in different places in the world. Very, very important thing. Now, objections to natural law. According to American philosopher Ross Schaefer Landau, this is the person who is the textbook author in my ethics class. According to Ross Schaefer Landau, natural law theory makes two basic though wrongful claims. Okay. Number one, acting naturally, fulfilling our natural purpose or telos, is always moral. According to Ross Schaefer Landau, this is wrong. This is a wrong assumption to make by natural law people. The second assumption is acting unnaturally, going against our natural purpose, is always immoral. Okay. Schaefer Landau maintains that, number one, it's wrong if we consider sexual reproduction. For in fulfilling the natural purpose of reproduction, the telos of reproduction, right, a man might be morally allowed to rape as many women as he likes in order to procreate more. This is contemporary philosopher Ross Schaefer Landau. So really, like, natural law justifies rape? I don't know what understanding of natural law you have, but it's definitely not the right one. It's not the right one. That's not natural law. Natural law will never, ever justify rape. Do you remember that natural right to physical integrity? That is a natural right. So, and the right to life. So whenever you go and attack somebody physically, okay, you're violating a natural right. You're doing something absolutely immoral, wrong, and unjustifiable. Unjustifiable. So, okay, no. Natural law will never, ever justify rape. So this is a very poor, inadequate characterization of natural law by, unfortunately, a textbook author. But then there's one more objection. Regarding the second objection, acting against our natural purpose is always immoral. Schaefer Landau thinks that if natural law is correct, it would be immoral or unnatural to use headphones to block unwanted noise, as we'd be acting against the purpose of our ears, which is to listen. Okay, so the natural telos of my ears is to listen. So if I'm covering my ears to protect me from unwanted noise, I'm doing something immoral because it's contrary to the telos of my ears. What an absurd objection and criticism from an American philosopher. You know, this is why sometimes I get really disappointed at philosophy and philosophers, actually, contemporary philosophers, for this kind of arguments. Like, really. Okay, first of all, if you understand morality, especially my students know we start in class with a definition of morality. And I always say morality has to do with your actions to other people and the positive or negative impact of those actions on those people. Okay? So when you cover your ears, even if you're not protecting, you're protecting your ears from unwanted noise. something that might be damaging to your ears, even if you're just doing it just for fun. You're covering your ears. You're not doing anything immoral because nobody is being affected by your covering your ears. Nobody's being affected in a positive or negative way. Nobody's life is worse off or better off because of you covering your ears. So that is an action that has zero moral worth, just like scratching your shoulder. What's wrong with scratching your shoulder? Who's being affected by that action? Nobody. So those actions are amoral, has nothing to do with morality. Now, why people offer these characterizations of natural law today? This is something you must know. Philosophers have a problem with natural law, and this is the problem. Number one, natural law always relies on the idea of God. Okay, there's always an appeal to God among natural law thinkers, most natural law thinkers, and that makes some people uncomfortable. Like, oh no, God, that's an absurd idea. I don't believe in God. So if you believe in God, that's the opposite of being reasonable. That's being stupid. So you can't believe in God. You cannot be an intelligent person and believing in God. Those two things don't go together. Okay, whatever. So, okay, if you say that up front, okay, I don't like natural law because of this idea of God. Okay, fine, just say it up front. But acknowledge the good things about natural law. Offer a proper, a just presentation of natural law. Don't mischaracterize it because you don't like it, which is what Mr. Schaefer-Landau is doing. The other reason that the reason why many philosophers, contemporary philosophers, don't like natural law or hate natural law has to do with homosexual relationships. Okay, and yes, according to natural law, this is something we addressed right in the previous video. Homosexual relationships are always wrong based on teleology. Okay, so if you consider the telos of your reproductive organs, well, the telos is to reproduce. So if you have two male in a relationship, they won't be able to reproduce. If you have two female, they won't be able. So that is always wrong. You're doing something. If you're using your sexual reproductive organs for a purpose other than reproducing, you're doing something against the telos, the nature of your organs. And philosophers, okay, because they're so understanding of homosexual people and people in the LGBTQ plus community, they think, okay, natural law is evil. Okay, well, I would say yes, that is a problem in natural law. I would agree to that. But it doesn't mean that the whole theory is evil. We have to take and I think this is proper to say, we have to take what's valuable, what's useful in natural law. But that it's definitely a problem, right? The issue of homosexual relationship. I'm going to say more about that in a moment. So first, the strength of natural law. Number one, according to philosophers in this tradition, natural law provides an objective standard of morality, right reason in agreement with nature. That word agreement, right, coming from Cicero, and now thinking of Maritain, the French philosopher, the practical agreement idea. Makes perfect sense. So it's objective. It's not a standard that is motivated by personal gain, will-based norm or practices, or arbitrary man-made morals. So that is definitely a strength in natural law. It's not subjective. It's not subjective. When my students disagree to natural law, I always say, okay, why do you disagree? What's your standard? What are you using to assess natural law as a bad theory? You just don't like it? Okay, that's it. That's your standard. I don't like it, therefore it's wrong. Okay, that is not very philosophical, to put it nicely, because that is so tricky, what we like and what we don't like. Why don't we find a standard, something reliable that we can all use and say, okay, based on that standard, okay, what you're saying makes sense. Well, natural people have provided that standard. Once again, right reason in agreement with nature. You don't like that standard? What is a better standard? Tell me. Okay, so second, natural law gives an affirmative answer to the question, do humans have a purpose? Remember, we talked about it. Why be moral? See Cicero's concluding statement in book one of his On the Laws. Beautiful, beautiful paragraph. Okay, I talked about that already. So, yes, we do have a purpose as human beings. And if you use right reason in agreement with nature, you'll see what it is. Once again, think of Cicero's concluding statement. Weaknesses in natural law. Many philosophers complain that natural law is too religious and it often invokes God as a standard or source of morality. Okay, I get it. Some people don't like the idea of God. Second, natural laws appeal to nature and teleology seem to make homosexual relationships unequivocally wrong. On this view, it won't matter how morally righteous an individual might be, so long as such individual is not regarded as biologically heterosexual. So, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, if you're gay, well, you're an immoral person according to natural law. That is a weakness for sure. I mean, it just makes very little sense. But take a look at number 3. Some pro-LGBTQ plus individuals demand that natural law recognize their right to pursue happiness, considering Cicero's exhortation that we're members of the same species, and the fact that their lifestyle does not victimize anyone. It's consensual. It's practical agreement. Two men or two women who agree on living together, having a sentimental relationship. Okay, there's no victimization there. So, and think about Cicero's exhortation. I have to say, this was something that I learned from a student of mine about 2 years ago. I thought it was a brilliant objection to make to natural law. Why? Because it's objecting to natural law using natural law ideas. That's the best way to attack an argument. Use the opponent's own ideas and arguments to counterattack their position. So brilliant. This is fighting fire with fire. This is what it is. So LGBTQ plus people saying, hey, natural law, why don't you acknowledge our right to pursue happiness? This is what makes us happy. This lifestyle. You might disagree with it, but don't violate my right, my natural fundamental right to pursue happiness. Respect that, number 1. Number 2, think of Cicero. We should all help one another, be friendly to one another because we're members of the same species. We're like brothers and sisters to one another. That is right reason agreement with nature. So respect me, get along with me, put up with my way, my lifestyle, that it's not victimizing anyone. See me as a brother because we are biologically, right, brothers and sisters. So, and we're going to be better off working together than divided. Oh boy. I wonder what a natural law thinker would say about this objection. But I think it's beautiful. Beautiful. So that's all I have for today. Thank you for watching. I hope these 2 videos, this lecture on natural law gave you a pretty clear understanding of the theory. There's so much, I have to say, there's so much in natural law that I simply offered a summary of some fundamental ideas in natural law. So my hope is that the video has been helpful in that regard. So if you have any question, comments, always post a comment and I'll be more than happy to read it and respond to it. Okay? See you later. Bye-bye.